This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Are people less happy or more happy the older they get? If you answered more happy, then you were right, based on a study published 2 years ago. It found that people generally become happier and experience less worry after age 50. In fact, it found that by the age of 85, people are happier with their life than they were at 18. The findings came from a Gallup survey of more than 340,000 adults in the United States in 2008. At that time, the people were between the ages of 18 and 85. Arthur Stone, in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Science at Stony Brook University in New York, led the study. His team found that levels of stress were highest among adults between the ages of 22 and 25. Stress levels dropped sharply after people reached their 50s. Happiness was highest among the youngest adults and those in their early 70s. But the people least likely to report feeling negative emotions were those in their 70s and 80s. The survey also found that men and women have similar emotional patterns as they grow older. However, women at all ages reported more sadness, stress, and worry than men did. The researchers also considered possible influences like having young children, being unemployed, or being single. But they found that influences like these did not affect the levels of happiness and well-being related to age. So, why would happiness increase with age? One theory is that as people get older, they become more thankful for what they have and have better control of their emotions. They also spend less time thinking about bad experiences. The findings appeared in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. Happiness is not the only thing that apparently improves with age. In a study published this year, people in their 80s reported the fewest problems with the quality of their sleep. Researchers surveyed more than 150,000 American adults. The study, led by Michael Grandner at the University of Pennsylvania, appeared in the journal Sleep. The original goal was to confirm the popular belief that aging is connected with increased sleep problems. The survey did find an increase during middle age, especially in women. But except for that, people reported that they felt their sleep quality improved as they got older. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Uganda's latest outbreak of Ebola virus is the 4th in recent years. About 200 people died in the biggest outbreak in 2000. 37 people died in the last outbreak in 2007. Ebola is a hemorrhagic fever. It can lead to bleeding inside and outside the body. Symptoms of the disease include high fever, vomiting, and sometimes diarrhea. Other signs include weakness, muscle pain, headache, and sore throat. Ebola spreads through contact with blood or other body fluids of infected people. The virus is often deadly. There is no cure and no vaccine to prevent the disease. In July, President Yoweri Museveni urged Ugandans to report all suspected cases of Ebola. He also urged people to limit their physical contact, even shaking hands. Yoweri Museveni said, "We discourage the shaking of hands because that can cause contact through sweat, which can cause problems. And when people are sick in hospitals with symptoms which look like Ebola, they should be handled by medical workers wearing protective gear." President Museveni also warned people to let medical workers bury suspected Ebola victims. He said, "Please do not take on the job of burying him or her. Call the medical workers to be the ones to do it, because they are the ones who can do it safely." Most of the cases in the latest outbreak have been reported in western Uganda. A World Health Organization official said the first cases in July were mistaken for cholera. But Dennis Luomafa from Uganda's Ministry of Health says Uganda has improved its ability to identify cases of Ebola. He said Uganda is probably in the lead when it comes to dealing with hemorrhagic fevers in Africa. He said the diagnosis of the Ebola virus outbreak was done in Uganda. Dennis Luomafa said although the disease is also found in nearby countries, outbreaks are not always identified. He said, in other countries, especially in some of the neighboring countries, many times Ebola goes unrecognized, and other times it goes unreported. He said in some neighboring countries, Ebola destroys whole villages. He said it then disappears because there is nobody left to infect. Ebola fever is named after a river near the first recognized outbreak. That was in 1976 in Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. To read, listen, and learn English, go to voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find our captioned videos at the VOA Learning English channel on YouTube. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Studies show that a drug called Truvada can prevent HIV infections. The pill is taken once a day. Studies showed it was 90% effective when people took it every day. It was only half as effective when people did not take it every day. Currently, in the United States, the drug is only approved for use as a treatment for people already infected with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS. Now, a government advisory committee says Truvada should become the first drug approved for use to prevent HIV. The Food and Drug Administration is not required to follow the advice of its Antiviral Drugs Advisory Committee, but it usually does. The FDA is expected to decide by June 15th. The Advisory Committee held a 12-hour hearing on May 10th to consider the evidence for Truvada. The committee urged the FDA to approve the drug for use by those considered at high risk for getting infected. These include gay and bisexual men and heterosexual couples where one partner has HIV. Mitchell Warren, head of the HIV prevention group AVAC, explains that Truvada is a combination pill. It contains two different antiretroviral drugs that had already been approved individually by the FDA. Then, about 8 years ago, they were approved as a combination. But all of those approvals only related to the use of the drug for treating people who are already infected with HIV. The manufacturer of Truvada, Gilead, would have to produce what is known as a risk evaluation and mitigation strategy. This would be a plan to help ensure the safe and effective use of Truvada. The plan would include extensive training for healthcare providers. It would also include testing to make sure people are not already infected with HIV before they take the pill. Some doctors say Truvada is a step toward ending the threat from AIDS. But some critics say the drug could give people a false sense of security and make them less likely to use condoms. Critics say it could also take financial resources away from more cost-effective methods of prevention, like using condoms. Truvada currently sells for about $14,000 a year. The drug would cost much less in developing countries, possibly several $100s a year. But that could still be too high for some countries. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal. You can read, listen, and learn English with more health news at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. In 1987, HIV/AIDS joined a list of diseases that could keep a person out of the United States. The government later tried to cancel its decision, but Congress made the travel ban a part of immigration law. People with HIV, the virus that causes AIDS, could seek an exception, but that meant extra work. Last year, Congress and President George W. Bush began the process of ending the travel ban. Now, President Obama is finishing that process. A final rule, published November 2nd, will end the travel ban, effective January 4th. HIV will no longer be a condition that can exclude people, and HIV testing will no longer be required for those who need a medical examination for immigration purposes. AIDS has killed more than 25 million people since the early 1980s. In September, there was news that a vaccine showed some ability to prevent HIV infection in humans for the first time. The full results of the vaccine study were presented in late October at an international conference in Paris. They were also reported in the New England Journal of Medicine. The researchers confirmed that the study in Thailand produced only modest results. The United States Army sponsored the vaccine trial. The study combined two vaccines, using versions of HIV common in Thailand. Neither vaccine alone had shown success in earlier studies. Thai researchers tested the combination in more than 16,000 volunteers. Half of the volunteers got the vaccine. The others got a placebo, an inactive substance. All were given condoms and counseling on AIDS prevention for 3 years. The study found 31% fewer cases of infection in the vaccine group than in the placebo group. But critics said the findings could possibly have resulted from chance. The announcement in September was based on all 16,000 volunteers. Almost 1/3 of them, however, did not follow all the required steps in the study. Results just from those who did were similar to the larger group, but the influence of chance was more of a possibility. Still, the researchers said the study produced enough valuable information to offer new hope for AIDS research. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report. This report and others are available online at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Health Report. Freezing weather can mean frostbite and hypothermia unless a person is prepared. Today we talk about how to stay warm, dry, and safe. Frostbite is damage that happens when skin is exposed to extreme cold for too long. It mainly happens on the hands, feet, nose, and ears. People with minor cases of frostbite that affect only the skin may not suffer any permanent damage. But if deeper tissue is affected, a person is likely to feel pain every time the area gets cold. If blood vessels are damaged, people can suffer an infection of gangrene. Sometimes, doctors have to remove frostbitten areas like fingers and toes. Hypothermia happens when the body cannot produce as much heat as it releases. The condition comes on slowly. Signs of hypothermia include uncontrollable shaking, very slow breathing, and difficulty thinking clearly. If not treated, hypothermia can be deadly. To avoid cold-related injuries, here is a simple way to remember 4 basic steps to staying warm. Think of cold, C-O-L-D. The C stands for cover. Wear a hat and scarf to keep heat from escaping through the head, neck, and ears. And wear mittens instead of gloves. In gloves, the fingers are separated, so the hands may not stay as warm. The O stands for overexertion. Avoid activities that will make you sweaty. Wet clothes and cold weather are a bad mix. L is for layers. Wearing loose, lightweight clothes, one layer on top of another, is better than wearing a single heavy layer of clothing. Also, make sure outerwear is made of material that is water resistant and tightly knit. Can you guess what the D in cold stands for? D is for dry. In other words, stay as dry as possible. Pay attention to the places where snow can enter, like the tops of boots, the necks of coats, and the wrist areas of mittens. And here are 2 other things to keep in mind, one for children and the other for adults. Eating snow might be fun, but it lowers the body's temperature. And drinking alcohol might make a person feel warm, but what it really does is weaken the body's ability to hold heat. Next week, advice from experts about what to do and not to do to help someone injured by extreme cold. And that's the VOA Special English Health Report. For more health news, along with transcripts and MP3s of our reports, go to voaspecialenglish.com.